2. Attempts at a solution. The importance of these two philosophies becomes readily apparent if we analyze the presuppositions of dominant modern politico-economic theories. Nominalism has, since Occam, held extensive sway in modern history. Materialism and empiricism have been essentially nominalistic. Anarchism is the logical conclusion of such a philosophy. No truth or reality or law exists apart from particulars and individuals. God, law, government, church, and morality are abstracts which represent a tyranny to man. Liberty means an unshackling of these chains and the affirmation of individuality as the essential aspect of reality. A logical champion of such nominalism, as witness Thoreau and Robert Lefebvre, is hostile to all religion and government and favours only a purely individual religion, if any, a self-government as the only true or possible government. The realist affirms instead the reality of the one rather than the many. For Plato's followers, the idea and the state had a reality which particulars did not possess. For the scholastics, as Aquinas, the Church, as the representative of the absolute reality and a continuation of the incarnation, had a reality above and beyond its every member. After Christianity lost its primary power in U.S. history, nominalism took over and found expression in the thinking of the so-called robber barons. Charles S. Peirce, 1839 to 1914, reintroduced realism in its pragmatic and non-religious form into American thought, and Dewey developed it extensively. In England, G.E. Moore, born 1873, moulded Fabian thoughts and thereby influenced America. The priority of the state to the individual and the reality of the state as against the unreality of the individual marked such thinking. For Dewey, the great community was the basic fact of history. Towards its actualization in history, all effort must be bent. But, for Dewey, the individual and the soul were invalid concepts. Man was truly man, not as an individual, but, after Aristotle, in society and supremely in the state. True education, thus, for Dewey meant not the development of the individual in terms of learning, but his socialization. Progressive education is quote-unquote realistic, as is parochial education to a great extent. Most basic educators, however, are nominalists. Educate the individual in terms of the particular facts of the universe without reference to God, truth, or morality. Further instances of the implications of the one and many problem can be seen in art. In the 17th to 19th centuries, art was nominalistic and generally aimed at a photographic reproduction of subjects, so that, in some instances, the very warts on a man's nose were religiously depicted. Reality belonged to a particularity, to individuals, and ideas were less important progressively than material facts. Medieval art had been dedicated to philosophical realism, that is, more interested in portraying universal ideas, faith, love, etc., than persons who were particulars and less real. Modern art is non-Thomistic realism. It despises things, particulars, individuals, and is given to portraying the experience of unity. It is thus a pagan mysticism, and not infrequently seeks the mystical experience in drugs because of its hunger for the absorptive one. In science, a clear instance of nominalism is Kinsey, who, in his studies of sex, denied the validity of universals and affirmed the sole reality of particulars. Sexual acts of any character are thus real, but moral laws are not. They are merely nominal, conventional, and alien to the nature of things. In much Far Eastern thoughts, as in Hinduism and Buddhism, the problem of the one and the many no longer exists in many circles, since centuries ago resolution was made in favour of the one. The goal of being is thus absorption into the one, and since particularity is unreal or even an illusion, it follows that history is unimportant. Thus, the Buddhist Milarepa could declare, "Because I see the self-love of the view, the thoughts of contrast by itself dissolves. How then can I have the idea of two, the self and others? The view is void of limits and discrimination. When, in the practice, I become absorbed, good and evil are reduced to self-liberation. How then can I have the idea of two, happiness and suffering? The practice is devoid of limitary feelings and experience. When I adhere to the self-continuance of action, dislike is reduced to self-liberation. How then can I have the impulse of two, craving and aversion? The action is free from limitary attachment. Since self-liberation is the fruit, both nirvana and samsara are reduced to it. How then can I have the idea of two, getting and abandoning? Absence of fear and hope is the fruit of this great practice. Meaning disappears from such a system, since meaning imposes limits and requires discrimination, all of which are alien to the unity of the one. Since history is struggle and discrimination, history means a revolt against the undifferentiated unity of being. As a result, Far Eastern cultures, in a sense, abdicated from history when their philosophies so resolved the problem of the one and the many. Only as Western thought has infiltrated Asia has history again gained relevancy. By virtue of its predisposition to absorption into the Great One, Eastern thought has been ready to accept such various forms of the One as the Communist International, the Ecumenical Church, and the United Nations. If meaning is accepted, it is the meaning of unity. In the West, philosophy has usually been dialectical, that is, holding two antithetical principles in tension, such as form and matter in Greek philosophy, nature and grace in scholasticism, and nature and freedom in modern thought, as Audiobook has shown. Because of this dialectical tension, it has been unable to rest content with a final solution, as has the East. In the West, therefore, both realism and nominalism, the one and the many, have had their uneasy sway. The Enlightenment, deism, and Illuminist thought exalted the principle of the one at the sacrifice of the many. Alexander Pope, in his essay on man, stated this Enlightenment faith clearly. All are parts of one stupendous whole, whose body nature is, and God the soul. This whole was, for Pope, present in every part, and the parts found their true being in the whole. As a result, the Enlightenment's hope was in a social order, introduced by the scientific state, which would liberate man and unite him in that true world brotherhood which represented his only hope. This faith received a major setback in the American Rebellion, a Christian counter-revolution, but it is again prevalent and has its great institutional formulation in the United Nations. The religious reduction of all reality to one is pantheism, or in more sophisticated forms, existentialism and neo-orthodoxy. The political reduction of all humanity to one, with the obliteration of all differences, is the United Nations hope. It is a faith present in many forms. Thus, a state law borrowing a conservative Bible club from state colleges as divisive, because limited to fundamentalistic Protestants and excluding Jews, Roman Catholics, atheists, and others, presupposes unity as the one virtue. Divisiveness is by definition evil. It is thus apparent that both realism and nominalism are ultimately destructive of the idea of truth. Nominalism admits no reality in universals other than particularity, and realism ultimately reduces all universals to one, unity, and especially in non-religious forms is quickly hostile to any notion that truth and unity can be in conflict. The Protestant Reformation asserted the priority of truth to unity. Modernist Protestantism increasingly denies the possibility of their conflict, implicitly accepting authoritarian unity. Truth is unity, and unity is truth. Ecumenicity, all churches in one, is of itself therefore deemed both good and necessary. Politically, the United Nations is also seen as both good and necessary. The possibility of improvement is admitted, but not the possibility of elimination, for both hope and progress rest in the development of the principle of unity. With respect to the United States, Van Zandt deplores the fact that the decisive liberal thinker Jefferson was a nominalist and hence given to an anarchistic individualism as expressed in his agrarianism. As a result, America's French Revolution has awaited the 20th century, but now the realism of Peirce and modern thinkers is restoring the primacy of the one. From such a perspective, a one-world order is necessary. Ideas thus do have consequences. More than that, the presuppositions behind ideas have consequences. The difference between presuppositions and intentions is an important one. With respect to foreign aid, the US program has had a liberating and ostensibly Christian intention while actually resting on a thoroughly going Marxian dialectical materialism, as Grosclose has ably pointed out. This presupposition, rather than its announced intention, has governed the outcome of foreign aid. A religious and philosophical consistency is thus important. Eclectic systems which lack systematic consistency and organization are doomed. In facing the menaces of Marxism and anti-Christianity, we cannot succeed if our own premises or presuppositions carry concealed Marxist and anti-Christian axioms. The problem of the one and the many may be avoided in the classroom, pulpit, and press, but it cannot be avoided in life. The question remains, which has primacy and priority? Is the state more important than the individual, or does the individual have a reality which the state does not possess? What is the locus of Christianity? The believer or the church? Does marriage have a reality which makes its condition mandatory, irrespective of the conditions of the husband and wife, or do the persons in the marriage take priority in their wishes over the idea of marriage? Is education to be geared to the developments of the individual or to the welfare of society? Raising these questions immediately makes apparent the fact that our society does have opinions on the one and the many, and that both nominalist and realist have, in the last century, extensively influenced our education, religion, and legislation.